July 1st, 2026, on the official royal calendar in London, this date was marked to pass in complete, absolute, unbroken silence. No public speeches had been drafted by palace aides. No official commemorative portraits were released to the global press. No royal standards were lowered to half-mast. And not a single formal statement was issued from the press offices of Buckingham Palace or Kensington Palace. To the outside world, to the millions of people going about their daily routines across Great Britain and around the globe, it appeared to be just another quiet, routine day in the United Kingdom. Yet inside the private, heavily guarded history of the House of Windsor, July 1st held a devastating, unforgettable weight. It was the exact day Princess Diana would have turned 65 years old. For nearly 3 decades, the British monarchy has approached the memory of Diana, Princess of Wales, with extreme institutional caution. Her legacy was treated like a delicate, high-stakes state secret, meticulously curated, carefully polished, filtered through official anniversaries, and kept safely behind thick layers of institutional glass. The palace spent 29 years ensuring that public emotion surrounding Diana was managed with quiet, controlled distance. However, by the time dusk began to settle over the tree-lined gardens of Kensington Palace on July 1st, 2026, that entire decade's-old institutional strategy was quietly and irrevocably shattered. It was not dismantled by high-ranking palace courtiers, nor by high-priced public relations advisors, nor by seasoned royal biographers writing unauthorized books. It was completely rewritten by an 11-year-old girl. Princess Charlotte did something so quiet, so remarkably unscripted, and so intensely emotional that senior members of the royal household were reportedly left fighting back tears behind closed doors. When the confidential details of what occurred within the private quarters of the palace that afternoon filtered up to senior royal officials, it landed with a psychological and emotional weight that nobody had ever anticipated coming from a child. This is not a story about an official royal tribute or a staged public relations moment orchestrated for television cameras. This is the intimate, unvarnished story of a young granddaughter who never had the chance to touch the hand or hear the voice of the world-famous woman she was named after, and what happened on July 1st when she decided, entirely on her own terms, that she was ready to know her real grandmother. To truly understand why the events of July 1st struck the royal household with such extraordinary force, we have to trace the timeline back just 2 weeks prior to Saturday, June 13th, 2026, during the grand military spectacle of Trooping the Colour. Thousands of spectators flooded the mall, waving Union Jacks under the summer sun, while international news cameras zoomed in on the iconic balcony of Buckingham Palace. Standing alongside her parents and brothers, 11-year-old Princess Charlotte smiled and waved to the gathering crowds. But royal historians, fashion curators, and eagle-eyed observers noticed a very specific, subtle detail resting on the young princess's left wrist. She was wearing an exquisite 3-strand pearl bracelet. To the casual spectator, it appeared to be nothing more than a traditional piece of elegant royal jewelry. But to those who know the history of the royal family, the item was unmistakable. It was a precise, matching design of the iconic 1988 Nigel Milne 3-strand pearl bracelet, a famous piece originally created for the Birthright charity, which Princess Diana had worn extensively throughout the late 1980s, including during her celebrated tour of Hong Kong. The authentic historical original bracelet now rests in the personal collection of Catherine, the Princess of Wales, who wore the genuine historic piece on that very same afternoon. Standing directly beside her, Charlotte wore a custom, smaller matching version crafted specifically for her. It was a clear, deliberate visual bridge between mother, daughter, and the late icon who preceded them. At the time, media outlets called the bracelet a touching, quiet fashion tribute. But nobody outside the immediate family realized that this was not a simple wardrobe choice arranged by palace stylists for a public parade. It was the first visible manifestation of a profound emotional transformation, quietly taking place inside William and Catherine's household. Ingrid Seward, the veteran editor-in-chief of Majesty magazine, has frequently noted that as Princess Charlotte matures, she displays far more than just Diana's middle name on her birth certificate. She exhibits striking, undeniable flashes of her grandmother's distinct aura, the same penetrating, direct eye contact, the same instinctive emotional warmth, and an unforced, natural composure when standing before massive crowds of total strangers. Yet for the first decade of her life, Diana existed to Charlotte in the exact same way she existed to the rest of the world, as a legendary name from the past, a silent framed portrait hanging in a long palace corridor, and a historic figure mentioned with soft reverence during family conversations. But as the summer of 2026 unfolded, that distant historical figure suddenly became startlingly real. On May 2nd, 2026, exactly 8 weeks before what would have been Diana's 65th birthday, Princess Charlotte reached her 11th birthday. Kensington Palace marked the occasion by releasing a new portrait taken by royal photographer Matt Porteous, depicting a bright, composed young girl standing at the crucial transition point between childhood and young adulthood. Royal biographer Duncan Larcombe has observed that turning 11 years old carries a silent, unwritten significance within the British royal family. It is traditionally the age when royal children are gradually transitioned away from sanitized fairy tale descriptions of their family's past. It is the age when they are finally trusted with the deeper, unedited truth, including the painful chapters, the severe public scrutiny, and the complex human realities that shaped their lineage. For years, William and Catherine had made a deliberate, quiet commitment to ensure Diana was present in their home, Adelaide Cottage and Kensington Palace. They refused to treat her as an untouchable, tragic figure preserved in history books. Instead, they spoke of her casually and warmly during dinner conversations, encouraging their children to ask questions whenever curiosity arose. They understood that Diana was never defined merely by her royal title or the dramatic headlines that surrounded her marriage. She was the groundbreaking woman who defied traditional royal protocol to walk through an active, uncleared landmine field in Huambo, Angola, forcing world leaders to confront the devastating human cost of armed conflict. She was the pioneer who walked into a London hospital ward at the height of public panic in the late 1980s and shook the bare hand of a patient dying of AIDS, single-handedly shattering global stigma with a single gesture of pure compassion. She was the devoted mother who snuck her young sons out of palace gates at night to visit homeless shelters, ensuring they understood the raw realities of life outside royal walls. Princess Charlotte inherited none of those memories firsthand. She was born in the spring of 2015, nearly 18 full years after the catastrophic night in Paris in August 1997 that took her grandmother's life. She was receiving her grandmother's legacy in second-hand fragments, pieced together from stories told by her father and mother. But as July 1st arrived, Charlotte reached a point where she wanted more than curated summaries. She wanted to feel the real connection for herself. According to senior sources connected to the royal household, the events that transpired within the private quarters of Kensington Palace on July 1st unfolded in 3 quiet, deeply poignant acts. The first moment occurred early that morning. There were no cameras lined up outside the gates, no public royal engagement scheduled, and no ceremonial duties on the family calendar. Yet, as the family prepared for the day, Charlotte made an unexpected request. She asked specifically to wear her 3-strand pearl bracelet again. When household aides inquired whether the piece was being requested for an upcoming photograph or a formal visit later in the week, they learned the truth. Charlotte simply wanted to wear it while moving through the house on a completely ordinary, quiet Wednesday morning at home. It was not about public presentation or fashion. It was a quiet, personal decision made by an 11-year-old girl who wanted to carry a physical piece of her grandmother's memory with her throughout the day. The second moment occurred later that afternoon, away from staff and routine household activities. Charlotte sat down with her mother, Catherine, and asked a quiet, direct question that left a lasting impression on everyone who learned of it. She did not ask about Diana's famous dresses, her grand public tours, or the historic events recorded in royal biographies. Instead, Charlotte asked her mother to share a story about Diana that had never been published in a book, never shown in a documentary, and never reported by the news media. She wanted a private story, a memory that belonged exclusively to the family. Catherine, who had reportedly waited years for her daughter to ask for that kind of personal insight on her own initiative, sat with Charlotte and shared an unscripted, warm memory passed down directly through Prince William. She described an ordinary, laughter-filled afternoon from Diana's private life at home, a simple moment of joy, motherly warmth, and unrefined humor that had never once been leaked to the press. A palace insider later revealed that during those quiet minutes of conversation, the grand historical myth of Princess Diana faded away entirely. To Charlotte, she was no longer a legendary figure from a history book or a tragic icon of the 20th century. She was simply her father's mother, a funny, loving, vibrant woman who loved her children deeply. Then came the third moment, the one that reportedly brought the internal atmosphere of the palace to a complete standstill. During their conversation, Catherine happened to mention one of Diana's most gentle, private childhood pastimes, a quiet detail known only to those within her intimate inner circle. When Diana was a young girl growing up at Park House and later at Althorpe Estate, she loved to wander through the quiet gardens, select fresh wildflowers, and carefully press them between the heavy pages of her personal books, preserving their delicate colors for years. Upon hearing this detail, Charlotte paused for a moment. She then looked at her mother and asked if she could go out into the private palace garden that very afternoon, gather fresh flowers, and press them into her own personal books in the exact same way her grandmother had done nearly half a century earlier. A source close to the household described the exact room dynamic when Charlotte made that simple request. The space fell into absolute, heavy silence. Senior household staff members, including loyal aides who had served the royal family for decades and remembered Diana personally, were reportedly forced to step back toward the hallway to fight back visible tears. It was not triggered by a dramatic announcement or a formal public ceremony. It was the pure, unscripted innocence of the request. An 11-year-old girl, separated by nearly 3 decades from a grandmother she never got to embrace, was reaching across time through the simple act of pressing flowers in a book. One insider who spoke quietly to royal correspondents observed that it was the closest anyone inside those palace walls had felt to Diana's living spirit in nearly 30 years. For decades, the British monarchy faced an ongoing institutional dilemma. How do you continuously honor the memory of Princess Diana without reopening the deep political and emotional wounds of the 1990s? For years, the official answer was strict institutional management, formalized memorials, carefully timed public statements, curated museum exhibitions, and structured distance. Yet Diana spent her entire public life resisting that exact brand of institutional coldness. She explicitly stated in her famous interviews that she had no desire to be a cold figurehead hanging in a gilded frame. She wanted to be a queen in people's hearts, defined by raw human empathy and approachable warmth. On July 1st, 2026, all of that institutional management completely dissolved. There were no public relations strategists guiding the moment, no palace press officers drafting approved quotes, and no television cameras recording the scene for public consumption. There was only a mother offering honest answers to her young daughter, and a granddaughter choosing to honor her grandmother through quiet, personal affection. Prince William has spoken candidly over the years about the deep responsibility he feels as a father to keep his mother's memory alive for George, Charlotte, and Louis. He has shared how he talks about Grandma Diana when tucking them into bed, ensuring her photograph remains a natural, comforting fixture in their bedrooms rather than a distant historical artifact. He wanted his children to grow up knowing who she was, what she stood for, and how deeply she would have loved them. The quiet events of July 1st serve as powerful proof that William and Catherine's personal approach has succeeded where institutional planning failed. Diana's legacy is no longer trapped in historical archives, media debates, or political legacy battles. It has been passed safely into the hands of an 11-year-old girl who is just beginning to understand the true weight and grace of the bloodline she carries. Princess Diana never reached her 65th birthday. She never had the chance to hold her granddaughter in her arms, never got to guide her through the complex demands of royal life, and never got to watch her grow into a confident young princess. Yet as Princess Charlotte walked through the quiet, sunlit gardens of Kensington Palace that afternoon, holding a small bundle of freshly picked flowers to press inside her books, the 30-year divide between past and present seemed to vanish completely. The strength of a royal line is not measured solely by ancient titles, stone palaces, or constitutional authority. It survives through the quiet, unbroken thread of human love. And on a quiet afternoon in July, Princess Charlotte proved that while Diana may be gone, her heart, her spirit, and her warmth remain deeply alive in the future of the British crown.